Hey everybody, I'm Francesca Maxime and this is Wise Girl, and I wanted to take a moment to speak briefly about intentions, what the power of setting an intention is, and uh, what we can do with our direction in our lives, with our minds and with our hearts even, if we're consciously choosing and setting an intention for our day or a week or a month. I'm actually sort of stealing this exercise from my meditation teacher today, Gerard Williams, and I'm sharing it with you because it's something that is timeless. It's something that you can do anytime that you meditate. It's something that in the meditation teacher training that I actually just completed, we do every time we meditate, and we set an intention at the beginning of our practice to really ground us and set the orientation for where in sort of the background and larger scheme of things we want our mind and hearts to sort of attune to. So what is an intention really? It's something that you might want to bring a little bit more of in your life. It's something that you might want to cultivate. It's something that you may feel as though there's a bit of a dearth of, that's a little bit lacking, or an area that you want to keep on growing and or improving. So maybe your intention for the day might be something like compassion or love or peace, or maybe it would be something like, effort or discipline or patience, any kind of sort of self-reflective word that symbolizes to you an action that you can kind of take in and internalize, and then hopefully that you can use as sort of a background, kind of a framework or a context, if you will, for your day. Now, one might say, why is setting an intention important? I can certainly say that I would love to be more peaceful and have more compassion and more love in my life and more generosity and all of these other lovely things. But the idea of setting an intention is because it is an intentional act, meaning that you're actually using some of your own awareness, actually activating some more of your prefrontal cortex, which is the executive functioning mind, and not just operating out of what goes on back here with the amygdala, and that's the more reactive fight or flight mind. Because what happens is that rear part of our mind, the amygdala, it's the first part of our brain that grows in the womb, actually, and it is the oldest part of our brain historically in terms of our ancestry. And we are now Homo sapiens, which means wise man, actually. I don't know how wise we really are these days. Sometimes I scratch my head and I wonder. But because we can have thought and language, really, that's where the Homo sapiens part comes in, and that's where the prefrontal cortex comes in terms of our ability to direct our attention and not exclusively act out of this fight or flight response. However, we are animals. We're human animals, and we often do act out of that fight or flight response, and that often is based on our conditioning. That conditioning is the environment that we've been in for a long period of time, whatever it is, whether it's a school environment, a family environment, and we sort of end up getting what we end up with as a set of beliefs, hardened beliefs, that are thoughts about ourselves that we feel are kind of fixed and locked in, and also thoughts and ideas that we have about others that we feel are kind of fixed and locked in. But when investigated with a little bit more curiosity, in fact, can reveal that they are much more sort of fluid than we give ourselves credit for, and that we give other people sometimes credit for being. It's why sometimes, people can surprise us, right? When we go in thinking one thing, and then we're like, oh, they actually reacted much better to that than I thought that they would. Or, gee, they'll never do this or whatever. But then, in fact, sometimes they do. So again, it's just not painting with too wide of a brush. So when we actively set an intention, we are able to direct our prefrontal cortex, our intentional mind, in a certain direction, and then we can also sort of drop into that more relaxed state which I've spoken of in many other instances, where we feel into our somatic sensations and kind of activate the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that can kind of get us all revved up, and the parasympathetic one is the one that kind of calms us down a little bit. When we breathe deeply, we actually activate that system. And setting an intention works in tandem with that so that we can operate out of a place of directionality that is sort of fluid. So we set the compass, but we're not so hard and fast on that exact precise course that if we veer off, a degree or two, we're in trouble. No, we're just sort of setting a general direction that we are going to be sailing in terms of what our thought pattern is. So today, for example, my intention was spaciousness and openness. I wanted to see if I couldn't create more space for myself and in my heart so that I could hold all of what is coming up in the next week or two with the holidays. And that includes a lot of activity and interactions with people that I don't normally interact with on a day-to-day basis. So this is just a little thought that perhaps it might help guide you in terms of where's my grounding? How do I sort of stay the course when I'm not really sure what's going on around me, what's happening around me? There's all sorts of events happening in the world that may or may not sit well with me. And one of the ways that we can do that is to drop into ourselves and to remember what our intention is, our best intention. It could be greater love, greater compassion, our highest order, if we will, that we can sort of call upon that as part of what we know is actually within us. And as we keep that sort of as part of the air that we're breathing, if you will, this little cloud, if you will, that isn't so cloudy but very spacious and sort of filled with good things that we carry with us. If we kind of keep that intention as part of our sort of general way of being, just see what it brings you and see if it helps at all. Because I think that if we can sort of consciously set an intention and remind ourselves of what that is at periods throughout the day, as opposed to only acting in conditioning and reactivity and sort of fight or flight response, which is typically the norm, that the ego likes to, control our lives in that way. We can let go of that a little bit and refocus our attention on our intention. We might just see the fruits of what that intention is intended to do. All right, thanks. See you. Bye.